Welcome back to the sensational world of Hair What I'm Saying. I'm your host, Kenitra, and today we're about to embark on a cinematic journey that goes beyond the screen, delving into the intricate beauty tapestry of the color purple. In the southern United States around the early 1900s, a time when societal standards and beauty norms were rigid and unforgiving. In the midst of this, we meet Celie, a character who, despite her resilience and inner strength, was labeled the ugly sister and underestimated for her intelligence. But here's where it gets interesting and fascinating. Celie's journey isn't just about breaking free from these unfair labels, it's a metamorphosis that transcends the physical. As we explore her transformation, we'll peel back the layers of societal expectations, unveiling a beauty that refuses to be confined by conventional standards. In today's episode, we're shining a spotlight on Nettie, Celie's sister, hailed as the conventionally beautiful one. It's a beauty paradox that raises a myriad of questions. Why the stark difference in perception between these two sisters? The answers lie in the nuances of societal expectations, and we're about to dissect it all. Our guest today, Jerrica, is here to add her insightful perspective to this beauty symphony. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thank you all for tuning in. We have Jerrica rejoining us on the Hair What I'm Saying podcast. Thank you so much, Jerrica, for carving some more time out of your day to share your insightful perspective you gathered after watching The Color Purple movie.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, we are excited to dive in. When I received this text message from Jerrica, I was like, I know I'm going to watch The Color Purple, but I wasn't as eager. But I became extremely eager whenever she reached out to me. I said, I have to go see what this is she is talking about.
I loved it. If you have not seen it, start right now, pause this, go to the movie, and then, get back, and then you can listen to the rest of this because it's absolutely worth it. And also support Black.
Absolutely. So, Jerrica, when you initially reached out to me, you were discussing like a really deep emotion about you not liking period movies because they make Black women's hair look dirty versus textured and kinky. Can you elaborate more about your emotion towards that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like a little bit of my background, I am a theater kid. So I love movies. I love plays. And again, we know about representation and all of that. So it's very far few in between. So if I did see someone Black on stage or in a play or something, it was always like in a slave, perspective or, like the sidekick or the friend or something like of that nature. And specifically with like period movies, because again, those like the story is super interesting. I was bothered because their hair always is so matted looking and then it's just kind of twisted together and it just like there's nothing to it. Whereas you have their counterparts in like these bows and like braids and like, it's just like an afterthought. And, if you get further into it in the movies nowadays, there's so many celebrities who talk about having to specifically hire Black stylists or having to specifically hire a Black artist of some sort to be able to deal with that person's hair. And so period movies in general, so you're already like, oh, great, it's a slave movie. Everyone in the room's going to look at you, the Black person. Or, oh, okay, they're slave. They have bigger problems than, what they look like. And it's like, they still have to take care of themselves. Their hair, when you go into the background of like slaves and all of that, what cornrows meant and just the historical significance. It's a lot more than just what they did with their hair.
Right. Do you feel as though, if you are the listener and you're listening and you're not aware of the historical background pertaining to braids in the African culture and what it meant, it actually sent messages, to different tribes as to what status quo.
It talks about resilience. Your hair's like wrapped into itself, protective, and things like, and again, these are things that I was myself ignorant to at the time growing up. We talked about that previously, like really had, to grow into this relationship with my hair. But again, same thing as like in these movies, seeing their hair, these little girls who, yes, they're low income, they're poor, they have these really great hats and all of these things.
Right.
But their hair is, most times in other movies and other plays and stuff, their hair is just kind of an afterthought. There's nothing to it.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So going back to that, just like a little history lesson, like braids, it did create like a status quo for different tribes in, Africa, to let people know what tribe you were from.
Right.
You were about to get married, whatever the case may be. So I guess what I'm saying is, being that one of the initial things slave owners did whenever they did capture slaves was cut the hair.
Yep.
So whenever you cut the hair, now we don't really identify with anything, because now you're mixing different tribes together, and now we can't even communicate because I don't understand your native language, so we're just all mixed up. And then I guess I'm trying to think about the fear and the emotion connected, with the unknown, just not knowing what's about to happen next, so hair is just gonna take a back seat.
Right.
It's not gonna become a priority at that point, because right now we're talking about survival. So now you done cut my hair, and now I'm mixed in this group of different Africans that don't speak the same native language as I do. So then we go to the US, and now we're just kind of like used as, we're just tools, really. Just tools. So the hair just take a back seat. And then if you continue to strip and strip and strip, now you're disconnected from what you were supposed to do to even take care of your hair. So I do wonder, like, in those moments, it's like, we just need to do something to get it out the way and just move forward.
Right.
And so, and being that we were working in the fields all the time, that's probably why it did appear dirty and matted, because it just probably, hair takes a back seat even in our life today.
Yes.
If life is lifing, it takes a back seat. I've actually had clients who were depressed and come to see me, and
that's their first step moving in,
and so, and the hair is matted, is tangled. It takes a lot to, like, when they fall into this mental depression, like, you just don't feel like doing anything, So I do wonder, the reason why it had to be portrayed that way is because that's what it was, or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I ever considered that. That's 100%. Absolutely. I maybe that's just me being, cynical, like, oh, it has to be something negative, but
it is negative at the end of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd never considered that before, but I think I think it could definitely be a combination of, especially like you were saying, survival, sometimes you're worried about, are you going to eat? Are your kids going to eat?
Right. Or are you selling my kid today?
100%. Yes. Am I getting, like, absolutely. There are definitely bigger, things at the forefront. But yeah, it was always interesting, because I feel like in those movies, like this one especially, you're meant to buy into the story of this person, and you're meant to, like, feel something for this person. And then, that's a part of their identity, and that's part of, them. And then especially, like, how her dad, Celie's dad,
oh my gosh,
tears her apart and says all the, worst things about her.
Yeah. And so, but it is interesting to see how Celie, her hair stayed the same, right, in those plaits, kind of, or in that, I don't know,
very basic,
but then Shug Avery had a different texture, and her hair was always up to par. So it's like, okay, what are we not doing within our own community,
right,
of Black women to not help each other with our hair? Because of Shug Avery, obviously her hair was more groomed, more presentable, and less, it wasn't that look of a slave,
right? Well, they had those, I don't know what they're called, but those little wraps almost, where they have them, they pin them into their hair, they maybe do something in the front, like a little curl or something, but the rest of it's pinned back, and covered,
right.
So I think it's something similar to that, is like, if you can't really do much. Celie didn't have much of that. She had that little, like, hat thing that was just on the back side of her head.
Yeah. But I don't know, because, like, like, you have Celie and then her sister.
Yeah.
And her sister was so, like, the original Color Purple, they were both dark skin complected. You know, Celie had the short, kinky, textured, matted hair. And then her sister had, her hair was kinky, but it was longer.
Right.
You know, but they were both dark skin complected. I did notice that they changed the dynamic in this particular, you know, version of The Color Purple, where Celie was still dark, still had the short matted hair until she got a little older. And then, Nettie was lighter skin complected with the longer hair. You know, I do wonder, why did they change the dynamic of the skin complexion?
Yeah. And I mean, they didn't change her hair.
They didn't change her hair though. It stayed kinky and it stayed textured.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I wonder, like, what I'm saying is, like, I wonder why back then Celie was still not as attractive as Nettie when they had similar features, just different hair.
Well, and then especially in this one, you know, this is again going to spoilers, but that part where Mr's singing to her, you know, when he's on the horse.
Which one, the original or
the new one?
The new one.
Singing to Nettie on the beach, and he's talking about her, and he's describing different things about her. You know, he's mentioning like her skin and like things like that. So it's interesting. Like even then, it's still kind of bringing some of the tension. Again, that's a part that you didn't. That was an added part, like the specifics of the thing he's pulling.
They
out.
Brought it out.
Yeah, so
right.
Specifically labeling those things, or specifically singing to her about those things.
All those aesthetic beauty
not
features.
just like, oh, I have, you know, he's interested in Nettie. It's like, here are the specific things that they chose to put in, which is just interesting.
It is. It really is. Okay, so going back to the original one. He never sung to her, right?
No.
The only time he was on the horse was when he was about to rape her.
Yes.
How did he? I can't remember the first one. When did he first see Nettie and he felt? Was it in church? It was in church.
Like he saw her, and you could tell him that, like, you know, at that moment that he was like, oh,
mesmerized with her aesthetic features. And it was at church. They were sitting side by side. They were sitting by, because her and Nettie and Celie were playing with each other, and he was looking off to the left at them while they were like laughing at him, looking at them. Yeah. So I wonder, why did they add that in the new one, where they really announced and made it intentional to talk about Nettie's features and how beautiful she was.
Yeah, that's true.
So going back to talking about Mr. Albert. His name is Albert. Albert singing to Nettie on the beach. And the lyrics were only about the aesthetic beauty of Nettie. And they I mean, I don't know if they intentionally done this, or if Holly was just a better fit and role for Nettie, whoever cast to be Nettie.
Right.
But she is light-skinned, like we mentioned previously. Do you feel as though that was intentional, being that they added a part in this new Color Purple that they didn't add in the original Color Purple? Because he never sung to her about how aesthetically beautiful she was. So do you feel like casting a light-skinned girl, do you feel like that was all done intentional, or what do you think?
I feel like with knowing how the world is, and with knowing how at the forefront these conversations are, I think it would be the first thing on anyone's mind. I feel like, just naturally. So I feel like it has to be intentional.
Right?
She's beautiful. She's a phenomenal singer, but also I feel like too intentionally. It's one of those things where you put it out there knowing that people are going to talk about it.
Right.
Or you put it out there knowing that it's going to be highlighted. So that you can already prepare ahead of time to, you know, say what you're going to say, or like explain why, or whatever the choice was. Maybe it's to create that, like put people in that place of being uncomfortable. There are really dark things that happen in this movie. There are really dark things that happen in this story. So I think it has to be intentional. It's like adding to it. Because
absolutely.
I feel like that's something that, you know, was a reality.
It was, or is a reality. You know, like, do you agree? Like, we can be racist within our own community as Black people, right?
I feel like people find, it's like, some people like to say, oh, it's a preference thing. Maybe it is sometimes, but that doesn't mean the way that you speak about preferences is
not prejudice.
Right. It shows you one way or the other which way, you know, you might lean. But yeah, 100%. I think there are definitely those biases that are built into
it. Sure is. And I'm speaking from experience. I know it is. Like, I grew up in Louisiana, and the dark you are, oh my goodness, I mean, it's not like that today. You know, dark-skinned people in the Black community are finally getting their praise of how very beautiful Black skin is, you know. But how I grew up in Louisiana, you were like cast almost. And you definitely got picked on for being dark-skinned.
Well, me, like, I'm run around outside all the time growing up. You know, you'd be like, come back and say, you're so dark. Why are you so dark? You've been outside, you've been in the sun, you know, and it's like,
yeah.
It felt like a negative thing. And like the darker I was getting, so I felt like it was a negative thing that, you know, you were getting darker. Not necessarily, oh, are you putting sunscreen on to protect your skin? It's like,
it was about beauty.
Dark. Yeah.
It was about beauty. It had nothing to do with protecting your skin at all. And let's be honest, a lot of Black people didn't know you needed sunscreen because we just felt like, oh, we're dark already. Right. We don't need it.
Right.
But now understanding like, no, it's protecting you, you know, at the same time. But you weren't raised like that.
Right.
You know, so I believe it was done intentionally too, just because, you know, lighter skin complected people in the Black, you know, community, they definitely had more grace.
Right.
You know, if you were lighter, you know, and then me, I kind of fell smack dead in the middle. So I didn't get either. Right. So I didn't get like, oh, you got the light skin and then, oh, you got the dark skin. It was like I was always safe. You know, so I don't know what it's like to be
you're definitely Black, but you're
but you're safe. Yeah. You're not noticed
right
in that way. You're noticed, but just not in that way, you know. And so even when people do call me light brown, I don't like that. Like, don't call me light brown. And it just goes back to, you know, that light skin syndrome, privilege, whatever the case may be. I don't like to be associated, you know, with that. I hate it.
Again, it's like a weird protective thing or like a defense thing and the other side of it. I don't know.
Yeah. So you know where all this stems from.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in this time period, you know, the inside slaves to the outside slaves, you know, that lighter slaves are in the house. They're the front-facing ones.
Yeah.
They're aesthetically pleasing. They probably got more, you know, responsibilities or privileges versus the outside slaves, you know, the workhorses, the, you know, burned by the sun, whatever. But yeah.
I wonder, too, like, the psychology behind, you know, white people in their own heads. Like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all Black.
Right.
But how did you come up with this idea?
What's a safer
right. What's
Black?
the safer Black? Yes. What's the safer Black person to present?
Where's the line? Is Will Smith the line? Is it like Cuba Gooding Jr.
or Michael
line?
Ealy?
Yeah, you know, like where is the line that's the comfortable?
Right. So what happened with me and you and Jerrica? Because we in the middle. Where did we go?
Why we do what we do? We are the millionaires, and then oh Lord,
I don't understand. Like, where did we go? Well, we in the house outside.
I guess it depends on what we could do, right? And then maybe figure it out by that. Flip a coin, decide. Which
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder if they base that on looks. You know, like, well, since you are not light or dark, like, did we go by the texture of the hair and you know?
Yeah, what was the next line, the next ranking?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's something no one has never discussed. Because like I said, we are overlooked. Like, we're safe. Like, we don't get picked out at all. You know, and I loved being in my little safe space too, because I didn't want to be associated with either, you know, because I don't like all that attention.
Well, even in the movie, like at that time, what was the difference? So it seemed like Nettie, you know, was the more curious one. She was into books, all of those things. But and then Celie had you know, she was sewing and she was doing the spending time with her mother and like
working, a craftswoman.
Yeah, doing more like, you know, household tasks or whatever, domestic tasks at that time, you know. So I wonder what was decided by that, and then why, you know, their dad favored Nettie over me on looks or whatever, but he obviously didn't care as much, you know, about assaulting her and getting his quote unquote needs met when he was assaulting his daughter, but calling her ugly, you know.
Right. It's like, and see, that's the interesting thing too about a man. Don't have to be attracted to you. aesthetically, but will still sleep with you because, and I don't know if that was like a power trip more than anything. I mean, at the end of the day,
why was Nettie safe in that when she's the beauty and blah, blah, blah?
Because he didn't respect Celie, but he did try to get with Nettie too.
Yeah.
That's why Nettie ran to Albert, I ain't calling him Mr. Albert's house, you know, because after Celie was no longer something he could toy and get his needs met with, and then he started trying to get them met through Nettie, and she left. And I do wonder if it's because Nettie did self-advocate and stand up for herself, and Celie was more afraid, you know, and just allow them to do whatever they wanted to her, because at the end of the day, her dad was a friggin' predator. All of that, they were all predators.
Yes.
Just preying on those women was, I feel like Harpo was like, he tried to be like his dad, but deep down, he just, girl, what?
That whole story was so problematic to me. And I don't think I noticed it in the first one, because, you know, in the first one, you just notice how Sophia is this like aggressive and loud, blah, blah, blah woman. I loved how they portrayed Sophia in the new movie with Danielle Brooks, because it's very much to like the angry black woman, when in actuality
she's not
at all. She's compassionate. She just is not going to take no shit, you know?
Literally.
Like,
that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And like at the time you took shit until you maybe in the safe circumstances were okay to like push the boundary a little bit. Maybe she could say certain things and argue with him at home, but like in private or in you know, public, you know, but like she was just not okay with that. And that's very much how I am. Yeah. And I loved how they portrayed her in this, but Harpo in this was even more so. Now I'm like, wait a minute. Because I thought he was insignificant in the first one. You know, except for the part when she's like, you told Harpo to beat me. You know, the iconic moment. But in this one, you know, during that, it was just kind of like, he's like that annoying person, you know, that annoying fly in the room that she just like kept going back to. I'm like, no, girl, you are great. Why are you going back to this man who is still terrible? He's like, has a terrible daddy. So if you can get past that, he better be a knight in shining armor. And the fact that he isn't, I was like, wait, why are we still okay with him? I think that was the hardest part for me during this movie, was that like, she's phenomenal, and she met this guy and she had kids, and then she got away from him, and yes, it was admirable that he, you know, took care of his own kids and, you know, her kids while she was locked up, but also that does not mean you have to jump back in bed with him and be with him forever. He still tried to try you, girl. Do you feel
okay? So, but Harpo has some negative influence too, because I do feel like on his own he didn't want to be that person. I feel like his dad kept pushing him to be that person. Like he was
like you control your woman.
Yeah, he was telling him to control her. He didn't want to. Like he genuinely didn't want to. He really loved Sophia for who she was. So that's why I'm like, I feel like he was negatively influenced to be that person that he wasn't. Because even when he tried to, you could see the hesitation. He couldn't even do it. He didn't even.
Well, and I thought we were going to lead more, you know, step. He's, you know, moving away. He's starting his own little thing. He's, you know, getting the juke joint going, blah, 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 blah. But of course, you know, his dad still stumbles in there every now and then. But that was my thing, was like these little things keep popping up that he's, you know, has these moments where you're just like, what?
But I guess my question is, do you feel like that was genuinely Harpo, or do you feel like he was negatively influenced by his dad?
I think those are times where it was probably more public, or it was more to the forefront, so his dad was probably poking him harder at that.
So his dad, right? Yeah, because he was proud.
Society, like, especially he was a man and a business owner, and he's, you know, taking care of, you know, I'm sure there was probably all those things in his ear. Because, you know, they had that little gentleman set up or whatever when she stormed in, and he got pissed off that there was a woman in there.
Yeah, they didn't even want a woman up in there.
Yeah, so I can imagine him going to those places weekly and then hearing that in his ear constantly.
Yeah, that's what I think. He was influenced, because I don't think it bothered him at all until people started men started talking about, you know, like, you need to control her. That's a lot of woman for you. You know, just all the negative comments to make Harpo feel like I'm not man enough. Yeah. When he really had a very genuine, compassionate woman that loved his ass.
But was not about to let him.
But was not about to like be that pushover like Celie. And that's not even love at the end of the day. Right. When you trying to control each other. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm like, I feel like Harpo, I just wish he could have been the man to say, no, that's what we do is how we do it, and we have an understanding.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand the woman Sophia is, and y'all don't. And it's not for y'all to understand because she my woman, you know, so.
Yeah, I don't think he probably got everyone to lay off until she was in jail for as long as she was for what she was in jail for. Because at that point, I feel like that's a unifier. Like, no matter what, like, how we feel about her, she does not deserve to be there for yelling or, you know, whatever.
No, because at the end she was disrespected too. Absolutely. You know.
Yeah. And so I think that's what, like, the unifier in that situation where probably everyone kind of laid off because, you know, at the end of the movie they talk, you know, see them, you know, kissing and stuff like that. So I think I think that's a lot of it probably. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you really think it was about the difference between Nettie and Celie? Like, because in the original Color Purple, they weren't very different aesthetically. Besides, Nettie had longer hair than Celie.
Right.
You know, so what do you think drew the attraction for Nettie versus Celie when it came to men?
I was thinking maybe, like, if anything, because again, taking out aesthetics, if Nettie is able to, like, hold conversations. I'm thinking, like, school teacher, like, housewife that can be the hostess and, you know, put on for the church and blah, blah, you know, the hostess that can have conversations and keep things about while, you know, the man's out having a cigar and, you know, with the guys or whatever the men thing is at that time. I feel like it's a safe choice because will listen, she will, you know, take care of the house, she'll cook, you know, she can have a conversation and host and party and blah, 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 and look good on your arm. Whereas Celie wasn't very confident. She kept her head down, you know, was called stupid all the time. She probably didn't feel comfortable saying a ton of words, or was afraid to talk to a man because is it going to be like this person who beats me? Or is it going to be this off chance that this person might have something to say or maybe interested in something that I'm interested in? Because I don't think she would.
Right. Did they even know that they had anything in common with this girl? Because she was always just told what to do.
Right.
And that she was not even seen or heard.
Right.
Seen for what they needed her to do, but they didn't see her for, like, the woman that she really was and how she really held everybody down.
Was Nettie older than Celie?
I don't know. I think Celie was older. Because I'm
like, it's maybe protective. But if Nettie's younger even, like, that still doesn't make any sense.
Well, maybe Nettie grew up seeing the ill treatment that was displayed towards Celie, and she was probably like, absolutely not. Because, you know, I grew up like that where I'm not the oldest, you know, but I had a lot of older cousins, you know, even an older brother, and, like, just family members. And I used to observe them, and I'd be like, absolutely not. Yeah. So I think the advantage of not being the oldest is you have the opportunity to just watch every damn thing around you, and you get to make a decision about how you want to move accordingly. And I bet that's what happened with Nettie, because they definitely did not hide how they felt about how ugly Celie was. You just stupid.
That's true, because in that moment, you know, when she was, like, realizing that they were going to be separated, she's like, okay, you know, like when she got married or off or whatever. Right. She's like, okay, you do this, you like,
yeah, she was lecturing her, like, don't let him do this and don't let him do that. And of course, Celie didn't have the backbone that Nettie had, so it happened anyway. One thing I did notice too was the difference between the old and the new. The old one, when the kid threw the rock at Celie's head and was like, she ain't my mama, and they all took off running and they were laughing at her. They were bad, you know. But the kids in the new one, they weren't bad like the old one, because whenever he did introduce them to my new mammy or whatever, and she did something I forgot, but I know she got slapped for it. He slapped her down, and the kids did not approve of it. They didn't laugh. Yeah. They did not. They were scared of, you know, opposed to that old one. The old one, I mean, she got hit upside the head.
It's clear that the evil was rubbing off onto them, whereas in this one, it was just like, it probably took it to a new level for them as well.
Yeah, they were like, that is not okay, you know.
I didn't notice that. You're right. Wow.
Because, you know, in that old one, when he introduced him, like, come on downstairs and meet your new mammy. And then they all come downstairs, and they took that rock and knocked her across the head, and she started bleeding, and he took off running after them when he should have been tending to her to make sure she didn't get a concussion or something. You know, and but in the new one, it wasn't like that. The kids were very uncomfortable when he slapped her down, and it never showed the kids disrespecting her at all. You know, so that was one thing I did notice compared to the new one and the old one. But I feel like Celie caught a lot of backlash because everyone said she was so ugly. Yeah. You know, even Shug Avery, the first time she met Celie, those were the first words that came out of her damn mouth. You sure is ugly. She just busts out laughing.
Right, and
you know?
She's drunk too. So drunk, what is it? Drunk thoughts or sober feelings?
Our sober feelings. Absolutely. Whatever you do in your drunk moments is what you intend to do when you're sober. You know, so, and it was just like, you know, but Celie got so numb to it that it didn't even bother her.
And especially to hear it from your hero, you're just like,
From your hero. Especially from, you know, actually in both Color Purples where Mr. Albert, whatever, he's having sex with Celie, raping Celie because she never wanted to have sex with him. And, you know, she looking at Shug Avery in that picture, you know, admiring Shug Avery because she knew Albert really admired and loved that woman's dirty draws. You know, and
not dirty draws.
He did. That woman could do no wrong.
I did like how they portrayed how he got all giddy and stuff. Like
he did.
So silly. Like, oh, so you can be nice. You can be a
human.
He
choose to be mean.
You are evil.
You choose to be evil. Yeah, he definitely chose to be evil. And the excuse for like making, you know, like, I hate when humans use the excuse like, oh, they're just, you know, people are human, people are flawed. No, some stuff is inhumane.
Yes.
You know, because I refuse to be associated with people like that because I'm human. No, you're not of the human race. You're inhuman. You're not a human. You're inhumane and you're evil. He was evil. He was super evil. You know, so I'll in the name of somebody looking ugly.
Yeah, right.
You know? So, I don't know.
Yeah, and especially like look at how they have Taraji's hair, you know, who's playing Shug versus Celie.
Then that's what I was talking about earlier.
Costumes and
that's exactly what I was speaking on earlier when I said, how come if your hair is styled and groomed a certain way, obviously you have mastered how to take care of your hair and what you need to do in order to make it look the way that it looks. How come you didn't push that to your sister, you know, like, and not saying that the texture needs to be altered, but helping her learn how to alter her texture. And even if you did notice like later on in the movie, her styles did develop and they did grow, you know, so maybe she did. And that's just something that they left out, you know, but, I think also it was intentional to make Shug Avery look a certain way because Albert was so in love with her, you know, and Celie had to look toe up, you know, to emphasize the reasoning behind the ill treatment, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I didn't even think of just like other plays or other Hollywood movies and stuff. I mean, it's just now getting to the point where it's common and probably first steps in movies where they have black artists and black stylists or whoever working on these things to actually have people who are experts in their craft that are working with people who are black or people who have experience with textured hair for things like this. Because in most movies and stuff, I'm thinking of like Queen Latifah in like Chicago or even Hairspray, where she had like, she's, you know, playing this big ornate character, which her is most definitely in those movies wigs or, you know, some sort of like install because they don't have somebody to do otherwise or to make it look the look in their mind, which there's nothing against wigs or anything like that. But I just personally enjoy being able to see that it is possible to do different styles and texture with textured hair. Because even Fantasia's hair at the end of this movie, when she's, you know, the business owner with the fancy, I mean, she's even got a nice little updo at that point where she's got it, you know, pinned in like a little bouffant. But like even then it looks different and upscaled using her own hair without having to put like a wig or, you know, even long flowy locks to look more presentable or more whatever.
Yeah, like that's why a lot of black women love Issa Rae, because every style she wears is incorporated with texture.
Yes,
it's hardly ever loosened. You know, the textures are loosened.
No matter if she's right in front of you on the in an interview, or if she's, you know, way far away on a stage or on a screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there was a time period where black women did start to, I'm not going to necessarily say remove themselves from that survival mentality, you know, but it became less of a thing,
right?
You know, so now you are able to take care of your aesthetic features and take it like self-care, like do things for yourself more than doing things for whatever
baby steps. Even like, it doesn't have to be this overwhelming, daunting thing. It's just like, I'm gonna wash my hair today.
Yeah, but just like, you know, so now the responsibility isn't all about what my master need of me, because I'm not a slave anymore. So it's like, also just now I'm not in survival mode as I was. So now I'm able to step back and actually take care of myself.
Right.
So, you know, at some point that happened, you know, not for all, but definitely for some, it happened. And obviously when you see Shug Avery, you know, the way how she dresses, the way how she grooms her hair is completely different from Celie. But Celie is in more survival mode than anyone in that movie.
Absolutely.
Which is why she looks the worst, you know. So this association with her being ugly, it's like, well, y'all aren't giving her an opportunity to actually even, you know, be able to tend to herself aesthetically, you know. Where do you think this influence stemmed from? Because in the new Color Purple, you do see nice, fine wardrobe. Even if it was like wardrobe around the house, it was still...
it looks higher quality.
Right.
It looks more expensive. Right. Like when they're in, was it Memphis or something? with Shug at the end?
Yes.
When
Yeah.
they left, like everything, rich color. And not even like, ooh, this is, you know, Italian leather. It's like beautiful colors with patterns, silk fabric, you know, something that just looks nicer. It's just a higher quality. It's definitely like richer colors, more intentionally. Yeah. So I think maybe in my mind, it comes from a different points at different, I guess, stages in time. So at this point, you know, Celie is able to have like her own business at the end. You know, she has more money and, you know, free in the sense of she now has land and property and things. I think they put more effort into things that are beautiful. You know, she makes the pants, you know, something she does with her hands. But I feel like even the building itself is just kind of very lackluster, even when compared to how Shug's life looked. Yes, Shug has more money. She's not in the South.
Right.
Or in this part of the South, you know, she's, you know, a musician, a performer.
Right.
But I still think that, you know, even when you're bare bones, you know, you have your church clothes, you have your play clothes, you know, that whole mindset. I think there's more intentionally things done later that are showing women, black women specifically, that you are beautiful. Maybe you don't have to do as much. Maybe you don't have to change as much, but you can put something on or do something to shift towards the more beautiful. You're not just work. You're not just a task. You're not just your hands. You are a beautiful being who just happens to have whatever this skill is, or you are a beautiful person who can, you know, tell stories or cook or provide for your family. Right. I think it just is more personable. You are a person. You're not, like I said, just a task or just tools. Like you mentioned at the beginning. I love that. We are tools. You're not just a tool. You're a person. You have feelings. You are sexy. You're beautiful. Right. You know.
I love that answer. Yeah, and that's how I feel too. Like, you know, you get influence from everywhere. Yeah. So, you know, the exposure, now that you are free and not having to only be assigned to what somebody is telling you what to do, you actually have freedom to do something for yourself. It's like now you're able to see the world at a different angle too.
Or even, I think what I loved about this movie in some parts were just showed the community. So you know, there's nothing but like a good black like group gathering where there's you know, the kick out, you know, the kickbacks,
like the juke joints.
The tons of people. And I think that also helped when you're able to congregate freely or more freely, less, you know, afraid or less whatever. Like when they were able to drink and have fun at Shug's bar or Harpo's bar when Shug was performing. And when you are around people, you feel safer in numbers, you feel safer in community. I love that, you know, you get to see those little more human things and not, you know, not this facade of like this business as usual or like this is what we do at this shop or this is what we do in our day to day versus like this is my family, this is my community.
I do, you know, just trying to put myself in the psychology of them, you know, Black people back then and how they had to transition. I wonder how hard that was to like every day, you know, oh, I can go here and I can get my hair done. And I can,
yes, building off of that. Imagine like having something that's yours. Going from nothing and going from like sharing or whatever is left over from somebody else to like, this is mine.
Right.
Like this is mine.
Yeah. And you can't take it. What Paul said on the Temptations, this is mine. You can't take it.
Oh my God.
But no, for real. Yeah, like I'm sure that was very empowering because even when I do stuff for myself, which I don't do a lot of things for myself, but I am learning to practice to do things for myself. I was like, this year is me versus me, you know? Right. So even when I do small little things for myself, I'm like, I feel so friggin' liberated, you know? And also it builds even more confidence, you know? So I'm like, I'm sure that's where even some of that confidence came from too, you know, not being chained to someone's way of viewing you. And it's like, no, this is how I view myself. And this is what I want to do for myself, you know?
Well, it's interesting. I think I was talking to someone recently because we were talking about how, you know, growing into this new person and all of that. Celie is this business owner. It's very empowering and very interesting that she makes pantsuits.
She sure did. Pants. Trying to stem away from that.
She's not the domestic, like, yes, I can sew and make curtains, all of these things for the home, but let's get you a good pantsuit. Like she made pants. And sure that in itself is very interesting because for the time period, you know, women, you're not feminine if it's not a curve, and especially Black women, when, you know, you have to have a butt, you have to have a very specific shape. And so it's very interesting that to combat all of that after everything that she's been through, girl's gonna make a pantsuit.
I know. And I feel like that was her way of empowering, you know, herself from within, you know, because that stigma of men telling women how to be when you don't have a clue.
And taking the skill that her mom taught her. And then bringing something from herself to kind of like create that. I thought that was beautiful. But I love that it was really interesting, you know, with the story itself in general, but just particularly those moments in this movie, and especially like the last scene where she's outside of her shop singing by herself, singing "I'm Here." I thought that song was beautiful. I like cried at that part when Fantasia's singing.
Ooh, girl!
I was just like,
I cried a lot. I will say it was different for me. Like the original Color Purple, I cried like that. That Color Purple touches soul, and this one more touch your heart.
Yes,
but you cry in both. You know, the first one is just so heartbreaking.
You feel sad.
What?
This one is like you feel like you've been through a lot with them and they've come out of it.
Yes, you feel hopeful. You know, the other one was hopeless until the very end, you know. And it was so, I don't even know the word describe it, not eerie, but it was just, even the gloominess of it, you know, it was pretty gloomy, you know, that first one was.
When I was seeing that I was like, I have to go see it with somebody Black and I need to see it. I need to be prepared to sob because that's how the first movie made me feel, you know?
Well, that first one was too much. It was too much. It was funny in some parts, but man, when it was bad, it was horrible. Yeah. And I don't know if you know, Danny Glover spoke on that specific scene when he had to separate Nettie and Celie. Did you see that? When he talked about that? Okay, so basically the director came to him and said, whatever you do, do not allow them to stay together. Like you fight hard to separate them.
Wow.
And then Danny said he don't know
feel that desperation.
Right. So he and then Danny said he don't know what he whispered to Nettie and Celie. Well, or Whoopi Goldberg and well, it wasn't Whoopi that played Celie in that part, but whoever that young lady was that played Celie and whoever the young lady was that played Nettie, he said, but he whispered something to them, and he said he can only assume that he told them, do not let him separate y'all. And he said, and that's why that scene was so powerful, because nobody knew what was instructed to do. They just knew what they were supposed to do. Yeah. He was like in the part where he had to beat her hands off of the tree, because, you know, they were really trying to.
Oh, no.
And he said he hated that scene so much, and how much it took so much out of him.
Yeah.
And I was just like, just listening to him, you know, tell that story made me cry, because I was like, you know,
that's every day, all day long, for, you know, separation. Like, that's a real feeling to tap into.
Yeah. So I think they mentally tapped into those scenes. And then I bet it took a lot for Danny to mentally tap out, you know, girl.
Wow. But never knew. I can believe it. That scene is so sad.
It is sad, you know, but they didn't create the same scene in the new one. It was actually not as sad. It was kind of like, it felt like acting. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't really that moving for me. I don't know about for you. What about you?
Yeah, no, that part, I can say it wasn't that moving, especially, or on the flip side, it wasn't as traumatic as the first one. But again, traumatic in the way that it was memorable, because you really understood the desperation. I think you saw, you know, some hits and things like that. In this one, obviously, I think a lot of that has to do with like what you can't, you know, restrictions on putting things out. But I also think a lot of that too was like, we see enough of black pain, and we don't need to continue. Like,
I know.
I think they
that's probably why, because you do see some people on TikTok or social media, and they talk about like we need to stop reliving this, you know, like, we need to start moving towards empowering and, you know, and uplifting us in a brighter light, and stop revisiting these dark moments. We don't need to see more ways
of the same thing. And I think, so I think I can understand why they didn't. And I didn't feel like I was missing much, only because I compared to the first one. I don't think I was missing much. But what I think that they did do when they had the absence of showing all of that was seeing more of them by themselves. I think I really appreciated seeing kind of like her sit in and try to really understand, like, am I gonna make this decision? Am I gonna do it now, or am I gonna wait? Like, who's gonna be my support? Am I gonna say something? Like when she would talk more freely and say some more snarky things with like Sophia, because she knows Sophia was like more upfront about it, you know. So I think that you could see her playing with more ways to like break away from that, which I enjoyed, because you could see them more sitting with those emotions versus like having to see the physical, you know, beating or physical, like when they alluded to him raping her, you know, things like that.
Right. Oof. Yeah. So, you know, at the end, or towards the end, you know, they all sitting at that little not a round table, it's like a rectangle table. You know, that's one of the most epic scenes in The Color Purple too, when Sophia eventually starts talking. And Celie finally stands up for herself. You know, like, finally, she's over it. She's done. And she really see the piece of shit he really is, and also that he is a coward.
Yes, and everyone knows it, and finally she can say it, and then everyone is like, yes, shut up and let her talk.
Yeah, they did. And then also having that support so that she can continue to self-advocate. And she pretty much told him, like, you know, everything you done did to me done been done to you. Whatever. You know, she pretty much cursed him.
Yes.
And then once he realizes the value and the worth that Celie brought into his life, because even in the beginning, you saw his life was a mess. The house was a mess. You know, the kids were all over the place. She created a home, a safe space for his badass kids and for his evil ass.
Yeah.
You know, despite of. And so the crazy thing is, he couldn't even see in those moments the value that this woman instilled within her, because she's so quote unquote ugly, you know. And I actually had just as much value as Nettie. I ain't saying more, but just as much, you know. But it's so funny how when something is in your face, you can't appreciate it. And as soon as she finally, which she always tried to get away from him, she tried to leave the first time with Shug Avery, and Shug didn't take her. Yeah. But Shug said next time and came back and got her, you know. But it's so funny to see how when Celie was removed out of his life, he was able to take a step back and see, like, damn, that was a valuable woman that really created safety, peace, you know, anything any partner would ever want in another partner.
And compared that to Shug, where she never cooked for him. She never, like he never got the things that he freely and easily got from Celie.
From Shug.
Yep.
Ever. And at the end, it's like he definitely was trying to, rekindle something that was never even kindled. She never wanted Mister. But it's like, but now you can see her.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same woman. She ain't changed much aesthetically.
It just took you shutting up.
Or just her removal.
Yes.
Like how powerful her removal was in that situation. It's like, the value has been removed. And now you really see how you ain't shit. You literally don't do nothing. She did everything. Your life crumbled after this woman left your life.
And that's why that scene you were talking about was so powerful, with him on one side looking at his dad when everybody else around them is gone.
Right.
It's just the same. And they were sitting the same way. And like, I think the camera angles in particular were like really highlighting that moment where it's like, we're in an empty old rundown house with all this food and no one to enjoy it with, and we hate each other.
Yeah, they definitely hated each other.
And it's and they're just left. And then he was like, "She gonna come back."
No, child. Now that's one thing. No, that's on a whole nother subject. But because I'm like, child, when a woman gone, she gone. That's it. Bye. Especially after ill treatment. Apologies don't mean nothing. Change behavior. An apology followed up with change behavior means everything.
Right.
But if you're gonna keep repeating the same behavior, then you leave the woman with no choice but to go. And he had years to get it right. Years. But it just goes to show, like, okay, did you really think she was unattractive? Because you definitely tried to be with this woman at the end once she had to remove herself. So was she as ugly? She didn't have the hair that you thought was so ideal. She didn't have the face that you thought was so ideal. Beauty is literally only skin deep. So my thing is, do you miss what is it that made you figure out, like, oh, this is what I want in a woman. This is, I had the woman of my dreams, literally. And I fumbled it horribly, numerous times, So it just made me wonder, like, all those comments about her being, you're ugly. When you say you're ugly, you're stupid, You know what I'm saying? So, like, what was that all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like this. It's funny that, like I said, with him compared to his dad, just the same things over and over. And it's interesting because, again, Harpo had a little bit of that too when he was like teetering on that line of looking like his dad, or acting like his dad.
Wanting his dad's approval more than anything. The men's approval.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then again, fumbled a good woman, and then he's all left alone.
Mm-hmm. It was so funny to me too how he tried to say something about her being a married woman, but you're still a married man and you dating old girl. Like, what are you talking about? Like, sir, you can't be sitting up here calling the kettle what's that saying? The pot calling the kettle black when you dating what was her name?
Yeah,
Skeet. What was that? Squeak.
Yes.
But was that her name in the original? No,
I don't remember.
She said she didn't insult her in this new one either, though, girl.
Yes.
Dang, what was her name? Okay, we're not gonna get caught up in that, but yeah, just finding ways to. It was like, I don't know, like the dynamic, of the men trying to find ways to tear down a woman was interesting. I'm like, what is that? The misogynist was real back then, so
well, it's like, it's the same thing we talked about with like light skin versus dark skin. It's like, you, even in your own community, even in your own space, you find a way to kind of like one up or be, it's that hierarchy. It's like those moments of like survival kind of poking you in the back a little bit. Like, it's like he needs to feel some sort of status. Like when he would be like, stop it, woman, or whatever, when his dad was around. It's like that. This is not how you talk to me.
And she looked at him like, you don't talk to me like that. Like, I don't know, you could tell the delivery was very unfamiliar for Sophia, because it's like, you don't normally talk to me like that. Like, what are you talking about? You know? But yeah, it was just interesting to me. Like at the end, you know, especially after receiving your text. So I was more viewing it from I was watching The Color Purple, but also trying to tap into the way beauty and aesthetics played a role in the movie, because it set the tone for Celie in the movie all around. Absolutely. You know, the girl couldn't get away from it, you know. But at the end, you know, everyone saw Celie for the value of the woman who she really was, and outside of looks and appearance. Right. You know, like, dang, we have been blessed with this lady being in our life, and we have always found a way to overlook it, dim it, whatever the case. Because Shug treated her better than the average, but she didn't treat her the greatest either. Right. Like, let's just be honest. Like, eventually she did, but not initially, you know. And I think it's a form of just bullying, because you know she's not going to say nothing back, or you feeling, you know. Also, Albert set the tone for, you know, Shug to treat her like that initially, until Shug finally, you know, changed it, yeah, Shug was able to see her beyond what Albert was trying to gaslight her into making her believe who Celie was, because they spent so many private moments together, and she was able to get more out of Celie, because Celie didn't talk a lot. Yes,
it's just like she was able to freely start thinking and seeing things, not just like admiring from afar, like when she would look at like Shug's picture, or she would look at, you know, outside the store windows when they were younger, they would look into the windows. So instead of like experiencing something outside of it, she started to really like figure out what she herself liked when she put on that dress, the dress that she, I know, right? You know, so she started to really experience these things and try new things and see things for herself, which was really nice to see.
They did skip that part in the new one, because in the old one it shows her putting on that dress and her trying to cover up her smile, and Shug was like, don't cover up your smile. So, you know, like, you see the nice transition, you know. And
they just had that one moment where she held it up to her in the mirror, but in like the original, you know, Whoopi's getting the whole makeup on. Yeah. Like, you know, really, you see how she's uncomfortable with like her beauty and like being noticed.
Being noticed. That's the word. Being noticed. And that is uncomfortable. That's a transition, you know, for someone psychologically. Yeah. You know, because she's only seen for what she can do, not for who she is. Yes. You know, so yeah. So once again, thank you so much, Jerrica, for rejoining the show and sharing your insightful perspective on The Color Purple. It was very great hearing and listening, you know, your interesting perspective of things, you know, because I had my own, and to listen to yours and like bring them in together and create this conversational piece. I'm curious to know what the audience as well, like, what do they gather from it, you know, after they watched it, how do they feel about it? So I just really want to thank you so much for, you know, carving some time the day after the new year to be with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I love that I can just find more ways to text you and be like, girl.
Yes. And, you know, I appreciate that, because sometimes it's really hard to find content out here, you know, so whenever you text me, I was like, cool, this is amazing. Like, I have some content to share without trying to actually search for it. So y'all, if y'all have content that you want us to jump on the podcast to discuss, hear our perspective on the situation, please email me at info@hearwhatimsaying.com, or reach out on Instagram at _hearwhatimsaying_. And Jerrica, can you please tell our listeners how they can connect with you if they want to speak with you?
Sure. It is at Jerrica from America, Jerrica, on Instagram, and I think it's the same on TikTok. I'm rarely on TikTok. I more watch on TikTok, but definitely I'm always on Instagram, and they're all linked together. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And there you have it, a deep dive into the soul-stirring beauty narratives of The Color Purple. We've explored Celie's transformative journey, challenging societal norms and revealing a beauty that defies expectations. A heartfelt thank you to our guest Jerrica for her valuable insights into the beauty dynamics of this cinematic gem. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share your thoughts. Your voice adds to the beauty symphony we're creating. So if you have any content ideas that you are wishing to share but don't want to be a guest on the show, please fill out our listeners' letters on our website at www.hearwhatimsaying.com. As we wrap up today's episode, remember that beauty isn't just skin deep. It's a narrative waiting to be explored. Stay tuned for more intriguing discussions on beauty. Don't forget to follow us on IG at _HearWhatI'mSaying_ and TikTok at HearWhatI'mSaying. Until our next rendezvous, this is Kenitra signing off from Hear What I'm Saying.